Okay, it says it's live, so maybe you can talk through. We've had some difficulties.
Good morning, everybody. Thank y'all for sticking with us. We have had a few technical difficulties and that we're still trying to get ironed out. So if you are seeing this, if you'd leave a comment, that would be fabulous, just to let us know that we are, in fact, not just talking to ourselves. So my name is Kristen Holt. I am a licensed clinical social worker with the Gulf Coast Center.
And my name is Denise Guzman. I'm a licensed professional counseling associate with Gulf Coast Center.
So today we are going to talk about grief during the holiday season and how that might impact you or your loved ones. Just to introduce the Gulf Coast Center, the Gulf Coast Center serves Galveston and Brazoria counties and has since 1969. They provide housing services, disaster recovery services, veteran services, as well as mental health and counseling, and the 24-hour crisis line.
Okay, hold on one second. Sorry to everybody watching. We're trying to get them mic'd up, but I have to lift my phone up for that to happen. Okay, sorry about that. Now go ahead.
All right. So this is, we are part of the Special Projects Department, which has a few different arms. Ours is Victims of Crime Act, and we provide outreach, education, counseling, referrals to individuals, groups, and families who were impacted by the May 18th shooting at Santa Fe High School. We are community-based, and we see clients for teletherapy. We also, under the Gulf Coast Special Projects umbrella, have crisis counseling programs that are available as needs arise. Some of the past programs have been for Harvey and Ike. Currently, they are providing services to those impacted by COVID-19 and Winter Storm Uri. The Military Veteran Peer Network provides peer support and resource connection to veterans and their families. One of the last projects that I'll talk about is the Projects for Assistance in Transition from Homelessness, and that provides people who are coming from being unhoused to permanent housing. So our goals today, we are going to define grief. We're going to learn about reactions and coping with grief, learn about why grief is different during the holiday season, discuss some available resources, and then we'll have time to take questions from people who are either commenting or people who are present with us here in the room. And thank you for joining us today. Know that the topic involves heavy subjects, and if you are feeling like you need some help, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255, or you can text HELLO to 741-741. If you or someone you know is an immediate risk, call 911 or your mental health provider. While we encourage discussion, please be mindful that this platform is not confidential or considered HIPAA compliant. If you choose to discuss or share, please avoid identifying information of the individual you may be discussing. So, defining grief. Loss is the absence of an object, relationship, position, ability, or attribute. Grief is a reaction to a loss. Many types of grief and death exist. Bereavement provides a change from normal activities for a variable period of time. Mourning refers not so much to the reaction to the loss, but rather to the process of integrating the loss into everyday life. So some emotional symptoms of grief are shock and disbelief, sadness, guilt, fear, and anger. Physical symptoms of grief include fatigue, nausea, lowered immunity, weight loss or weight gain, aches and pains, and insomnia. So children and adolescents can have different reactions to grief and bereavement. You may see a behavioral change such as a decline in school performance, aggressive or rebellious behaviors, acting younger than current age, decreased energy, school withdrawal, or refusal. Some physical changes include appetite changes, headaches, GI problems, or sleep problems. And emotional problems include loss of interest in activities, sadness, feeling inadequate or anxious, resistance to authority, direction, or intervention. Why is grief during the holidays different? Feelings of guilt to celebrate holidays without the deceased, avoidance of discussion of the loss, reminders of the loss, traditions, memories, and cultural practices. Maladaptive coping, and maladaptive coping are those things that we do that are not perhaps the best for us. Those include drinking or using substances, being promiscuous or careless about relationships you get into, becoming more morbid, suicidal about life, experiencing panic attacks, health worries, or other anxieties about seemingly unrelated things. That can be anything from there's crumbs in the butter to there's traffic in Houston. That could be feeling numb, dead inside, or like you're looking on your life from the outside. Self-injury, such as cutting or engaging in activities that are self-destructive, or feeling chronically depressed or isolating from friends. So some of the good ways to cope with grief and bereavement during the holiday season include seeking spiritual or professional counseling, taking time to relax, joining a support group, being patient with yourself, which can seem really, really hard when there's so many things to do and get done before the holidays happen for your family, letting yourself feel grief, engaging in enjoyable activities such as listening to music, exercising, reading, and spending time with family and friends, and eating good and healthy foods.
So we'll also talk about some protective factors. Whenever we talk about protective factors, those are going to be those things that are going to help us cope in a more adaptive manner, a more positive manner. So some of those are going to be coping skills, pre-existing skills that help you reduce stress, things that you know are going to help you calm down and reduce those impacts of grief and bereavement. Resiliency related to coping skills, people who have experienced one type of loss, it may be in a different area, such as a disaster, a hurricane in the past. Those different things that helped you rebuild after that are going to improve your resiliency and help shape how you come back from your loss. Social relationships, even though the coping skills are going to be a bit different, there's going to be ways in which people manage emotions differently. So having people who can empathize with you with your loss can be really powerful in feeling connected and reducing some of those symptoms. And then lastly, supportive counseling. So counseling can take on a lot of different roles, different forms. It can be more in a support group type setting. Maybe it's crisis counseling if we've gotten to more of a crisis situation, or it can be an ongoing relationship with a therapist or clergy, just depending what kind of social structures you're connected into and where you would seek out that assistance. So then we talk about living with grief. So many people find different ways to recover from grief. We're going to be doing things such as spending time with supportive people. So those support groups, friends, relatives who can understand and empathize with you about your loss. Maybe they can help you process that loss of whether it's a loved one or an experience, so forth. We're going to focus on managing physical health, so good sleeping habits, regular meals, not just healthy meals, but also just remembering to eat as a baseline is important. Being aware of any changes such as your increase in alcohol usage or will aid in managing your grief as well. Avoiding any major life changes, kind of putting them off for a bit right after a loss, things like marriage, divorce, big changes in employment. They should be delayed a bit so that you're not making any big transitions after a loss period. Remembering that all things are going to take time. So grief really doesn't have a timeline, and it just takes a bit to incorporate into your new functioning. And it's going to be individual to different people. So just because a family member of yours who maybe is grieving that same person seems like they're doing better doesn't mean you will. And then lastly, professional help is available. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, seeking out professional help through whatever means feels most appropriate for you, whether that's seeing your doctor, family doctor, maybe you do want to go to a therapist, whatever that may mean for you is out there and it's available. Honoring your loved one's loss during the holidays. So during the holidays, we can do different things to memorialize those that we've lost. So things such as lighting a candle in memory each day during the holiday season maybe. Maybe it's having a special basket to hold notes or poems or found memories. and then reading those notes and memories whenever you're gathered as a family or whatever social group it may be. Leaving an empty chair or a spot for that family member, and continuing the traditions that were important to that person. Grieving is individual, and there's no one or right or wrong way to remember the person who has passed away. Respectful communication and compromise within a family is going to be very important, and it's going to be more necessary as everyone is grieving and has their own personal story with that person in addition to those feelings of loss. So maybe leaving the empty chair may be something that you want to do to honor your loved one, but that family member of yours maybe isn't in the space to see their photos yet or something like that. So open communication and compromise is going to be really important during this period.
So I just wanted to take a chance to see if there were any questions that had come up, give people a time to process some of those things that were kind of heavy before we continue on.
I've not received any. Abby, do you have a question now? Or? How could you help a younger child, cope or memorialize maybe a parent or a grandparent? How would you address that?
That's a really great question. We were asked how to help a younger child memorialize someone that is lost, such as a parent. We do have some resources, and I believe that the communications person will be able to post those at a later date. One of my favorite resources that you can Google really easily is Sesame Street Military, and they have a series of videos that help kids understand grief and loss. That is kind of one of my favorite things ever. And we'll talk more about resources at the end of the presentation, but that particular series holds a special place for me. It is great for the preschool set. It's even great for some of the younger elementary kiddos. That's a great question. Thank you for asking. So, activities to intentionally remember the deceased. This is adapted from another great resource, which is Bo's Place, and they are located in Houston and provide a lot of support services. We will also make sure that their information is posted. This is from one of their works called Helping Grieving Families Through the Holidays, and these are a lot of different activities, but in all things, this is customizable. You don't want to feel like you have to do everything, but what resonates with you. So some of the things that they suggest include looking through photo albums or scrapbooks or home videos to remember the person, having a day of quiet reflection. Since the holidays can be so hectic, just intentionally saying, you know what, I'm going to take this day and have some time off in your brain. You can revisit this person's favorite places, visit more relatives and share family stories or memorials, or getting together with other families that you have been friends with and remember your loved one, lighting a special candle in your loved one's honor, writing letters, poems, or songs, and drawing a picture for your loved one, and take it to the cemetery or place it in a special container or memory box. Have a special mass or worship service in honor of your loved one, as according to your particular religious traditions. You can make a quilt of memories, symbols, or pictures. Purchase an ornament or home decoration that symbolizes your family member, their relationship, or their hobbies. I've also seen teddy bears made for kiddos out of shirts that become very well loved. You can start a scholarship in their name or make a donation to an organization that was important to them. Plant a tree or plant in their honor. Do a community service project in honor of your loved one, or volunteer in some way. You can take a trip. Just being out of the space where you have the most memories of that person can be very releasing. It can give you that opportunity to be out of those memories where they might have become heavy on you. You can designate a special container, such as a memory box, Christmas stocking, or holiday basket for family members to put those notes or memories in. kept and compiled. Another thing that one can do is to visit the cemetery. Again, this is a lot of different things. Don't feel like you have to try and do a certain amount of them. Do what feels right. So here are some questions to consider for the holidays. As you're thinking about moving into the holiday space or have already started, and keeping those in mind. So what are your favorite traditions that your loved one had about the holidays? How will you honor them during the holidays? What is one of your favorite memories? What makes holiday time special for you? Would you like to have the same holiday traditions you had before your loved one died? What happens if the holiday doesn't meet your expectations? Are there people that you can turn to for support? If your loved one is here, what gift would you like to give to them? So those are adapted from the same resource from Bo's Place. Okay, so that's kind of the end of our prepared presentation. So I wanted to give a chance for any questions or comments that may have come up during the live.
So what if my child's experiencing like grief, but more for experiences, and we've gone through a lot in the past 2 years, and I've started to notice that they're struggling. What could I do for my student if they're mourning the loss of experiences?
Okay, so that was kind of that's a long question, so let me
Sorry.
repeat it. No worries. So the question was how to help a student who has had more or increased grief during the holidays. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So a lot of it depends on the age of the student. You would take a different tactic for a high schooler versus a preschooler. And for a younger child, I would make sure that things are on their level and answer any questions that they have, and not just say, we'll talk about that later, or, if it really, really can't be answered at that point, then take them aside. For an elementary or middle school age kiddo, they know that things have changed. They know that their life has changed a lot in the past 2 years. So just kind of being more understanding that they may have trouble with those changes would be somewhere to start. What do you think about a high school student?
I think with a high school student, also just allowing them the space to talk about whatever that transition or adjustment that they're trying to make. And I think the other half of the question that I heard you say was if it was more about an experience, something that they didn't get to do maybe in this case because of the pandemic in the last 2 years. It would still be a lot of the same things that Kristen just stated, being given them the space to discuss those feelings, allowing them a space to be vulnerable. Sometimes it feels like we shouldn't be mourning the loss of prom, for example, or something like that. Like, oh, it was just an event that didn't happen. But it was still something that they may have been looking forward to for a long time. That does need a space to be talked about. Maybe there might be some ways to kind of incorporate that or come back to that at a later date. If you can come down to like the root of what it is that they were missing. Maybe it was having that experience with their friends. Is there another social gathering that can kind of feel the same way, not exactly replace that experience that didn't have the chance to occur, but still serve that same purpose?
I think I've got one more question. So if I'm a parent, or if I'm someone in general, I guess, and I'm grieving, and I feel like my grief is so profound that I can't be supportive, what would your advice be for me if my child is also grieving?
You want to go first? Sure. So grief is going to look different, like we said, but in families that unfortunately is common, where there's multiple family members grieving and it's hard to be there for one another whenever you're kind of going through it yourself. I would suggest normally there to help them identify the other supportive people in their family. Is that a godparent, an aunt, an uncle? Maybe it's, if you're a part of a church, maybe it's a pastor or some other supportive adult in their life that may be able to be empathetic and sympathize with them during that time of you coping on your own also. As a parent, I normally would also give the recommendation that if you're both grieving a loved one, incorporating them into some of those things that you may be doing to honor that person so that they feel also included. And that might, even if you're not necessarily focusing on the student themselves, could also help them process some of that loss.
I would also say that this is one of those cases where you have to put your own oxygen mask on first, so you can't help anyone else if your cup is already empty, and seeking whatever level of professional help that you're comfortable with would be a place to start, because when you're in a little bit better space, you can help others that are around you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And there's not any additional questions that have come in. So again, we just wanted to say thank you and appreciate y'all's time and being a great resource for our county and the schools in those 2 counties. So thank y'all again.
And like we said, some additional resources like the Bo's Place handout that we were talking about will be listed either in the comments or in the description after this.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Everybody have a Merry Christmas.